Good evening, everybody. It is June 9th, 2021. Let us start with the pledge and then we'll move to the agenda of tonight's work session.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
justice for all.
Hey, good evening all on this hot June evening. So, exciting agenda today. Hope everybody's following. And sorry, folks, just trying to see who else is joining us tonight. So, we have a lot going on right now in the village. So I'm looking forward to going through this agenda and then talk about what we're doing after this. This is a regular work session agenda. So let us get started.
Mayor, can we make a motion to go into executive session for matters of real property, please?
Right. Thank you. So we have a motion to go into exec session.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I just want to let the public know that when we go into executive session, you will not be seeing us, and then we will return. I don't know how to tell the public. I don't know if there's anybody on here, so that they have some sense of, that's what I was stalling for, to have some sense of when we can be back. But I guess you'll have to come back when you can.
We're not gonna close this meeting. The board is gonna leave and then sign into the executive session that Maddi sent earlier.
Right,
The separate link, it will be in your calendar, and we should be back within, let's say, within the hour.
I know, but it doesn't help the public because basically they're staring at nothing. They don't know for how long. So you think it's about an hour?
Well, I'll be here, so
Oh,
I will be here.
You could do the tap dancing. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay.
Sure. So if I will be here.
So
All right. It's unusual that we do this, but for tonight we had to do it. So we shall return. Thank you all. And the public, I just want to welcome everybody back. It's now 9:13. We were in executive session. We had started, moved into executive session, back onto work session. I know it's a little late in the evening. Last week it was an early-ish evening. Tonight's a later evening. So if we could keep presentations to less than 10 minutes for anybody presenting tonight, that would be truly appreciated. And without announcements, and if anybody thinks of any announcements, they can make them as the meeting goes on. I think we're going to turn this over. Is Martha on or somebody else running?
no, it's me, Mayor.
Oh, congratulations, Karen.
So, thank you. So first up, we have a presentation from our Recreation Advisory Board with our Bill Garrison, our Superintendent of Parks, and Pat Yost, who is the Chair of the Recreation Advisory Board. So with that, I will turn it over to Bill and Pat.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Great. I hear that. All right. Maddi, do you want to pop the presentation up?
Sure thing.
So I'll keep this relatively quick. I mean, this is intended to just provide just remind folks, and especially some of the newer members of the Board of Trustees, kind of what the purpose of the Rec Advisory Board is, and go through some of what we've done and kind of what our discussion topics are that we're looking to do over the course of the next 6 months or so. So one, appreciate the opportunity to come on and give you an update. And without further ado, we'll kind of move along. So this is an interesting board because it's one, it's advisory from that perspective, but two, it's also one of the few intermunicipal boards that exist. So we've got representatives from the village of Ossining, the town of Ossining, and the village of Briarcliff Manor, all sit on and participate on the board as equal members. The purpose is to take a look at policies around protection, maintenance, enhancement of the park, programming within the rec center, as well as we've done some work over the past course of the past year or so, kind of working through questions around, COVID procedures and things from that perspective. So, we're fairly active. We've got a good, robust membership that you can see there on the sheet. We do have a couple of open positions. I know that Trustee Quezada and I are looking to. We've had discussions with one potential person to take one of the village positions, and then I know we're trying to schedule a second one. So hopefully we'll be able to fill those open slots from a village perspective here relatively soon. Okay, next slide. Like I said, we discuss issues, opportunities, and challenges related to a wide variety of issues around. We talk about programming, we talk about capital, we talk about policies, and then, we spend, there's some time every meeting talking about potential kind of issues or questions or, concerns that come up that make their way to the Rec Advisory Board through a wide variety of channels. So they can come to the Rec Advisory Board either directly to a member, they come through the village management, or they come directly to Bill quite often as well. And so we work pretty closely with Bill to come up with a relevant and appropriate agenda every month for the discussions. And a lot of times different topics come up that we work through, right? Just to remind folks, we've got a fairly broad set of parks, both within the village and the town. And then we also have, significant discussions around community center, the summer camps, and what's happening with those. And then other, youth and other adult programs identified and managed through the village Parks and Rec department. That includes, items that are managed for the town, participants as well through some of the intermunicipal agreements there. Okay. Next page. Over the course of the last year, it's been pretty interesting. Clearly with COVID, we've been meeting remotely, but that's actually had some fairly good, what we view as beneficial aspects. We did meet virtually, and what that did allow us to do was actually meet during the summer, which is something that the Rec Advisory Board normally didn't do. Traditionally there hadn't been in-person meetings in July or August. But we did that this year, and I think that actually was very valuable as we were able to have discussions and provide input on the budget discussions in a much more timely manner that way. I think everybody's seen the park review and the capital spending input. That's been shared with this board as well as the town. And I know it's being used as reference materials for both of the comprehensive planning discussions and in some of the budgeting. We spent a fair amount of time on a few meetings talking about the event policy, which I believe has been, some portion of the policy has been adopted by the village, as well as, a slightly modified version by the town as well. So that's, it's good to see a positive impact from the work that we're doing. And we talked about, some other maintenance and upgrade activities, and we talked a little bit about the park bench and tree naming policy, which we'll talk a little bit more about next. So one of the things that that's more recent that we've talked about, and I think Bill's been able to start to put into place is a lot of questions around what do we do with people who want to name park benches or provide plaques, and from that perspective, and there really wasn't a coherent, consistent policy around that. And so we talked about that a couple of times. Bill went and did some research on what other municipalities do, and we felt that it was important to keep, bluntly keep the price much more reasonable for our municipality than some of the other places do. We talked about the trade-off on maintenance costs versus the initial expense and consistency, and we decided, one of the things we did want is to try and make sure that, benches are consistent across the parks. It's just both an aesthetic and a maintenance perspective. And so from a bench perspective, the proposed policy is that, there's potential for a plaque on, on the existing bench, or if someone wants to buy a new bench, and then there's the price is appropriate for each of those. Then also, from a tree perspective, if someone wants to donate a tree, we've got a cost. The cost could vary a little bit if they want to do a specific type of tree, but I think we all agreed that we wanted to keep native species, and the location of them is going to be the direction of the Parks and Rec Department, so that it makes sense where they go. Okay. Other topics that we've talked about talking about over the course of the next 6 months or so, it's like how open is access. Camp and summer programming is coming up, and it's definitely going to be a topic of discussion at our next meeting, especially as the state guidelines continue to change and get modified from that perspective. We've talked about the capital document that we put together as a living document, and so that'll be a topic to see if there's anything new that we want to talk about, either from what the town is moving forward with, or is there anything from a village perspective that we want to recommend being prioritized or not. We know that there's a recreation center renewal study kind of underway, and we want to make sure that we can, as a group, provide input on that. And then as we fill some of these open spots, we want to make sure we're bringing on people and bringing them up to speed quickly and making them active and contributing members as we go. And then one of the topics that we've got for the next meeting is we've asked people to do homework and go down and take a look at the waterfront and come back with thoughts and suggestions on how that might work. Understand that a fair amount of that is town property, but still that's a resource that's used by everybody there. So and from that perspective, the last page is really just to remind people of all the parks that we've got, because it is a fantastic resource in addition to the community center that we have. They're like fantastic resources that from our municipal perspective that we really want to make sure are kind of maintained and leveraged as much as possible for as many people as possible. So, and from that perspective, I think that's my 8 minutes. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Great stuff. You know how much I miss being on that group, but I don't want to take wind from the deputy mayor. I would just make a request from an informational. I get a lot of emails about parks, a lot of email. That and people speeding through different streets, I think, are right up there. It would be helpful when you put up the names of the parks. I mean, you can Google directions and everything, but I constantly have to actually look to see whether Richard Wishney is a town or village park, so that when I respond, I could say, it's not mine.
Okay.
See, supervisor. So if you could just put a V or a T, just so people, it's informational. It's a minor detail, because most of this is really great stuff. And I just had only one question to ask you: is what, aside from funding the many things you want to do, how can the board be of help to make your lives better and easier as board members?
So, I mean, I think continue to be the conduit of information and kind of like issues and questions that come through, because I think people are much more likely to go to village board members with questions and issues, and I think just making sure that those make their way to us on a regular basis is good. And then I think the other one is since this is an intermunicipal board, I think that making sure that we're kind of trying to work in conjunction with your counterparts from the town and the village of Briarcliff Manor, where it makes sense relative to some of these things, is important, right? Especially on these policies that can, like you said, right? It can be very confusing for people. Is this a town or is it a village question? And for me personally, I think the closer that the policies can be in sync, the better from that standpoint. It just makes it easier for everybody.
Thank you. I mean, they do. I mean, somebody just texted me. I see the information, but in the presentation stuff, it would just be helpful. Thank you, sir. Always nice to see you.
Yeah,
and,
good to see you.
I'm sure others may
Any
want to
other
comment or questions.
If I could just do real quick, I want to say thank you to Pat and everybody on the Parks board itself. They do an awesome job. So thank you, and I do appreciate that the presentation. And I know they're very active. That actually a couple of weekends, some of the members have gone to some of the parks, including the waterfront itself. So I do thank you for all the services that you guys do. And I hope I'm filling in some, the mayor's shoes as a placeholder for now, that position as a liaison. So, but thank you.
Yeah, you are. Thank you for your support.
Okay, I'm looking around. I'm not seeing anybody else.
Nothing else?
We
Okay.
always love to see you, Pat, and you do volunteer work even beyond this. Very much appreciated, and send regards to everybody on the board on behalf of our board that you guys do a great job. I'm hoping that in the summer this year to be invited possibly to the summer walk and the nice party afterwards.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Village
All right.
Manager
Take
Diatori.
care.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Village Manager, you are up next.
Yes, sorry, muted. Next up, we have discussion on our state environmental quality review findings, our SEQR findings for planning and zoning, and that is with Corporation Counsel Kahan and our Director of Planning, Jaime Martinez.
Thank you, everybody, and good
Hello.
evening. We have tonight, Simon Cates is with us. I think Frank Fish is somewhere there as well. Sylvia is with us as well, I see. You folks have all received the most recent iteration of the comprehensive plan. The finding statement is also out. Tonight is if you have any additional comments, Simon and Sylvia are here, so those comments can be made. The expectation would be that next Wednesday on the 16th of June, there would be resolutions presented to the board. The first would be to adopt the finding statement and to adopt the comprehensive plan. And the second resolution would be to adopt as a local law the zoning text amendments that had previously been discussed by this board. So it's really, it's this, in a sense, the floor is yours, Mayor and members of the board. If there are any further comments you have with regard to the, particularly to the comprehensive plan document that was most recently sent around.
I have a couple, but I went first before. I'm going to let others speak first, and I will be I'll wrap it up at the end. So folks, anybody have any comments? Nope. Nobody has any comments on this?
Okay, I actually do.
Okay. I mean, that was the point of the meeting, is they're actually
and
asking for comments.
Usually Omar goes first, so
No. We're changing it up a bit today.
Yeah, no problem. I do want to thank you for this, and actually it was very helpful part of the summary that was sent to us in regards to the changes that were made. It was kind of easy to follow, and some of the highlights that was there. So I want to ask two questions, sure. One to the board and one to Frank or whoever wants to answer, Simon or Sylvia. On page 129, there was some language added in regards to Arcadian shopping center. We did not discuss that portion of that. I know it was a comment from the owner of that property. In regards to, let me go back. Let me look at the PDF itself. I have it in front of me. So pretty much, and you highlighted in red, This trend is to impact neighborhood shopping like Arcadian Shopping Center, like Ossining downtown. The Arcadian is an economy asset to the under trend in changing retail trends, just as a traditional Main Street retail. And in the future, the village will consider strategies to allow greater flexibility to the village commercial zoning districts to ensure economic access to the Arcadian Shopping Center. Availability in future. I wasn't sure, this is the question to the board. Sure, I know it's a comment made by the owner of this property. He sent a letter, he spoke in one of our public meetings. But I know a lot of the people make comments, you know, or send letters. None of them, you know, I don't have any specific, but none of them were made part of this. Part of this revised portion of the comp plan. So can you guys explain to me a little bit more in what that phrase or that paragraph actually says, and what you guys were trying to accomplish with that?
Annie, would you like us to address that
Yes,
question?
please.
Okay. Yeah, I think what we're trying to do there is just recognize first the comment, which was a lengthy one, and he wrote a letter about it. But the key thing there is we felt, gee, we had not mentioned anywhere in the plan, original draft, anything about the Arcadian Mall. And we felt he is correct that it is an economic asset to the village. What he was asking for is the ability to respond to the real estate market in the future. We're not suggesting anything there other than that the village consider in the future if the mall gets in trouble. And as quite a few malls around the country have, most municipalities have responded by that to help those malls where they could, rather than see them go bankrupt or become a deficit sort of to the community. Some malls have been abandoned or boarded up and they become a real eyesore. So that was the attempt, just to recognize that. That's all it was meant to be.
Okay, so I have a problem with that.
Okay.
The reason why I have a problem with that is because, and Stuart, stop me if I'm going to say something, that we had met with this developer. And there's reasons why I don't want to go into too much of detail, but I disagree with the proposed plan that he has. So for that reason, and again, I'm just one person on the board, I would like that whole thing to come out of there. Just because of the nature of the project that he's thinking of doing in there. I don't agree with that, but again, I'm just one person. I don't think it's appropriate for this. Again, so we took a developer, and I'm not saying he's not valuable to the community, he is. But if somebody else, a homeowner that we got letters, that we received letters and concerns, their comments were not part of this. I don't see that as a, like I said in the beginning of my statement, I don't have anything in specific, but just because a big owner comes in, a developer comes in and it wants and send us this lengthy letter, that makes it as a part of this. So I'm not sure if that is even, to me, again, I did not agree to that. That wasn't part of the discussions last time that we had. So again, I'm asking now the board, if you guys agree with that, to leave it there. If the majority of the board agrees to that, then we can leave it there. But if the majority of the board disagrees with that, I would like that portion to be removed from the comp plan.
I can chime in.
What number is that? I just want to look at the language.
It's
52.
page, yeah, it's 129, and then there's 131 on the PDF.
Mayor, would it help if I share my screen so we can all look
Oh,
at
I'm
it?
good. I'm looking at a document because I have it marked up with my own stuff. Add language about importance of Arcadian shop as an economic asset is the language. Add language about the importance of the Arcadian shopping center as an economic asset is on page 129. Okay, I just wanted to see the words that they're using. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Omar.
No worries. So I'll take the opposite view from my beloved colleague, Deputy Mayor Quesada. The reason being that a lot of the other comments that we've gotten, like the document that the mayor referred to from the community, were either already addressed in the comprehensive plan or were in some ways irrelevant in that it's outside of the scope of the comprehensive plan. But this was one that seemed like a real missing piece in that there's an entire district plating zone. I'm not using the right language, I'm sure, but there's a zone here that is unique to the village that only applies to that one district. And we have the waterfront as like a chunk, downtown's a chunk, Upper Croton. You have these various chunks in the village, and that Arcadian region is a chunk, and it's completely missing from the whole comprehensive plan. And so where I think there might be a middle ground between where the deputy mayor who's saying remove all the language, my feeling is, and having read it, I'm comfortable with all of the language, but I can see how some may take exception with specific pieces of the language here. So I would recommend put two things on the table. One is leaving it exactly as it is, and another is if there is specific language that feels not right, then I would be open to hearing what language that is and then removing that language. But just removing that one piece feels like here's this whole chunk that we're just completely ignoring and leaving out of the comprehensive plan, which doesn't seem like it's in accordance with the vision and like the scope of this document.
So I'm gonna sort of try to answer that in a way, short. In the beginning of the SEQR process, one thing that we actually we were taking out some of the items, and I'm not gonna actually take on, like we remove parking in front of the two.
It's in there. That's
no.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that we took that out. We took out pretty much accessory apartments because we felt that even though there's no actions right now, but we felt that future boards may see that or take that as something else that this board right now felt that is not appropriate to be part of the comp plan itself. So to me, leaving this piece in here, because Stuart, can I ask you a quick question before I say this? How much can I say about the project that it was
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, thank you. So
I think
again,
already too much has been said, actually, to be honest with you,
That
Manny.
project is off the boards. It should not be a part of this discussion and should not be part of anything dealing with the plan.
Thank you, Stuart. So part of my concern is, how the perception this will look like in the future for another board to actually interpret what he's asking.
But Manny, if you look at the language, so I'm going to read this again. Add language about the importance of the Arcadian shopping center as an economic asset. In addition to the downtown, to be fair, the number of people employed there, the number of stores, restaurants, barbershop, banks, arguably is probably equal, maybe a little bit less, but not much less than the downtown area that we talk about all the time. In its current state, there are X number of stores. There is a big supermarket, which the downtown does not have. And it is an economic asset because it has many stores, restaurants, etc., that supports a big part of our community, if not all of it. No different than the downtown. So it says, add language about the importance of the Arcadian shopping center. It is an economic asset. Actually, my problem is I don't know what add language means. Like, I guess you guys will come up with the language we should look at. But it is an economic asset, and we did leave it off through all of this process. It has been left off, and I think wrongly left off. I think it needs to be included. I think
and Mayor,
perfectly fine.
And that, like I said, if the majority of the board feels that way, I just think that, to me, adding that, and I'm not taking anything away from
Mhm.
what they do for us and how valuable they are. To me, putting a cluster within the downtown and neighborhood commercial areas, and giving that opportunity and kind of putting something in the language where talks about development within itself or changing something, that's what I have a concern with.
Okay, so
That's all.
to Omar's point, I think let's talk language. So folks, if we do something, maybe economic asset, it could be, what do we call the downtown? I don't think we call it an economic asset, but it is, well, actually economic asset makes sense to me, to be honest. It's a commercial zone. It has everything a commercial zone has.
Mayor, can I'm sorry to jump in. I just want to clear something up in response to something that you said a moment ago. We have proposed specific language for this. It's in the draft that we sent.
Okay,
That's why I was asking if you want me to share my screen.
I'll do that. Let me move this. I just need to move my document. So please do that while I do this. Thank you.
I could just say, I know, I understand what Manny means, and I do believe, I find it ironic that the downtown
Thank
and Arcadian are both being called threatened retail assets, since it was the creation of Arcadian that contributed to the death of our Main Street businesses, because they all went to Arcadian. So now they've been, grappling back, and now Arcadian is under threat from Amazon. So everybody's old brick and mortar retail is now under threat. But I personally wouldn't equate them, but it's very different.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to talk about this. I would like, it's the last sentence.
Which is your last sentence? Just if you could read it to me. I don't know which.
In the future, the village could consider strategies to allow greater flexibility to the village's commercial zoning districts to ensure that economic assets like the Arcadian Shopping Center remain viable in the future.
Yeah, I'm not even sure we can do that. So,
it seems very, I don't know where's that comes from, but yeah, of course we want Arcadian to succeed. I don't know what greater flexibility to our commercial zoning districts means. It's very open-ended.
yeah. So that's what makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's actually Frank kind of answered that question on part of that flexibility, sure. Allowing.
Yeah.
So.
First, I was thinking the same thing that was just mentioned or mentioned by Omar. It may be that it's only the last sentence, Manny. That's the real.
Just for me, it's the last sentence.
If you deleted the last sentence,
Right.
well, then would anything before it have any meaning? I guess that'd be the question.
I think it has some meaning in that it recognizes, as you said, Mayor, the Arcadian Shopping Center.
Yeah, which I think is what we should do, regardless of your point of view of whether you like downtowns versus strip malls. That becomes, look, Dana, as Dana so acutely stated, 10 years ago, everything was going one way, arguably malls, all the indoor malls that were built killed the downtowns, and now the malls are dying because somebody else killed them. This is like an ongoing issue.
I would note that sentence doesn't actually refer only to the Arcadian Shopping Center. Rather, it refers to all village commercial zoning districts.
Right, so it should end there, period, and not continue to then point out to the Arcadian Shopping Center staying viable.
Yeah,
There
that
should be a period after the word
After
districts,
district.
as I think Jaime just
Yes.
cleverly pointed out.
Maybe
And I don't
that-
think we're wordsmithing. I think this is actually a bothersome
Yeah. So
concept.
just
Yep.
put the period after commercial zoning districts.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
eliminate to ensure that economic assets like the Arcadian Shopping Center remain viable.
Correct.
I think that's implicit in what was said prior to that.
Yep. Okay. What else
So
do you
it-
have, Manny? I think Manny was up. What else do you have?
So before we move on, Mayor, so is the board okay on that? We would put a period after
Oh.
partial zoning districts. So we would make that change then.
Well, I hear Manny looks like he's agreeing. Dana is the one that brought it up, and I just agreed to it. Anybody else comment on this?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Great, so we'll make that change.
Okay.
So
Okay.
129, right?
Yeah, on your document,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's like sentence number 9, comment number
Yeah,
9.
yeah.
Yeah, number 9. Okay.
I can compromise
Great.
with that.
Email.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look, I have all this stuff. Unfortunately, the other stuff that I have is not related, nothing we can do. I guess we're gonna have to take it on phase 2/comp plan amendments kind of stuff in regards to zoning and map changes and stuff like that. So besides that, I'm in concept, I'm okay with everything else that was
Right,
drafted.
and you have a few more days to send an email. If you wanted to, say
No,
anything.
is those changes that I'm thinking is we won't be able to do it in here.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Anyone else? I didn't say hello to Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. Anyone else? Oh, and Simon, I didn't say hello to either. Hi, Simon.
I'm back. I apologize for that.
Bob, we actually were able to see you the whole time. You sent me a text that you lost electricity and you may not be working, but I've been watching you the whole time.
Well, you might have been watching me, but was I frozen?
Oh, you know
Yeah,
what? I
because
wasn't looking that
I
closely.
lost
I'm sorry.
internet, and I was downstairs making a couple of electrical adjustments. So I
Oh,
think I'm
don't
good
say
right
that
now.
out loud on a public meeting. No
Oh,
electrical. You were not making any electrical adjustments.
Yeah, I had to change a battery.
Okay. Anyone
I-
else? Not seeing. Bob, any comments on this? You're good with all changes?
I read through them, looked at them. I was, other than that completely new piece, it seemed.
Okay. Omar, comments?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, if I may, point of clarification, on some of these things, Westchester County is in parentheses. Just tell me again why that's the case. You've got Quesada, Fritchie, White, and people that made the changes. Why Westchester County? For example, the passive house development, which I had suggested, why Westchester County?
I was trying to track who had made the comments. If that one, I thought that the passive house one was the county, but if it was yours, I apologize. I may have.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe they did, but it's something we have. We actually have one, and so I want to.
But yeah,
I was more of them.
I was just trying to keep track of who made the comment.
Okay. Add suggestion to encourage universal design. I don't even know what that means. Language. Okay, let me just go to my commentary. The way it's showing up here is a little different. Okay, changes not made. If we could go through some of that, please. Update on figure 32. Okay. So, increased parking requirement for residential units brought up by Quesada. According to your notes, new comment may require a public hearing. So you're saying you did not include the change because that increased parking requirements, because someone feels that that's too much of a change and would require a public hearing, correct? Who makes the decision, I guess, is my question.
I think it's
on
really,
all of these.
we would defer to Stuart. We usually defer to the, corporation counsel on that and the board itself, but we just were pointing out there that is something that, has not been discussed in the past and was not discussed with the public. So we were a little bit worried about that. It doesn't say you can't do it, but what we would suggest is simply that's the type of change that could be done, upon initiative by a Jaime at your request, and it would just have its own environmental assessment form. You could do that as a separate public hearing in the future. But I defer to Stuart on that. I don't recall it ever being raised. And so it's a new issue that we had discussed before about new issues. Something totally new. It's not in response to a comment. But, you know, normally you would not be able to do that at this point. It would, you know, it'd be a future action that you could independently take, examine it, and have a public hearing on it.
Okay, it's been raised numerous times. I've been raising it for 5 years at virtually every opportunity I have, that this 1.0 and 1.5 is a ridiculously low number, which puts us in a situation we find ourselves. So now we have to hire consultants to figure out how to deal with parking issues, because even when we build new, we do not create enough spots. And I actually did say that. I don't know, Manny must have said it too. I said it in more than one meeting with you guys. It's not a new item. It should have been included. It was not included by the committee, but it was included by members, at least a couple of members on the board. So I never know what to do with that, because I don't know. I don't know how to deal with things that when I say things, they're turned down, who decides to turn down things and why it's okay. So it's a bit of a challenge for me to be, and these are exactly the same words I used when we had this exact conversation about a month ago.
Are we on a particular page here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Mayor, just as a point of clarification, and that's something that Simon and I kind of talked, and I had a conversation with Stuart as well. So Dana, if you look on page 74 of the PDF, but it's actually page 72 under document itself. So it talks about parking, and it talks about the T-zone and parking in related to that. But if you look under, it says other districts have the following minimum parking requirements for residential use. And it's very specific in what they're saying in the bullet points. So to me, we did talk about this. It was part of the conversation. So why can we take that and make those changes? So I understand what Simon says. To me, it is part of the document. It was part of the public meeting. So why can't we make the changes here? Because this reflects the changes that will have to be on the bulk parking requirements that are part of the 270 chapter, the zoning chapter itself. So I want to be very clear in this. And this is just one of the many items that I had mentioned early, that it will have to be in a phase 2 process. That, you know, I want to take the opportunity that we do have some modifications that we have to make in our zoning regulations, that Stuart is working on it, and I want to do it as a bulk, because unfortunately I cannot do this now, even though I think and I feel that we should be able to do it because of that page 72 in this document. But that's just me.
I'm trying to understand what qualifies something as being out of the realm of being part of this plan, because the purpose of the plan is in fact to make changes.
Yeah. Mayor,
who decides that a change is too big?
Yeah. If I could, let me try it another way. If we had gone to a public hearing where we were suggesting some change in these parking regulations that you just mentioned, and now the board is saying, hey, we want to change these, or we want to modify these once again, the public having seen it and commented on it, you'd be perfectly free to do that. And again, I'm going to defer to Stuart here, but
excuse me, Frank, we're like in the twilight zone. Okay. This is exactly what Omar pointed out to you a month ago. The board was told that their turn for adding and changing comes at a sequence. Now the board gets told that we should have said this at a previous sequence, but since we didn't, and the public didn't get, so everything you're saying is very rational, But honestly, that's not actually the sequence that we were told about. And what it does is it diffuses a level of trust, because rightly or wrongly, we were very well, to me, it was very clear there's a sequence, and kept being told, you know, you could do this later. Your turn as the board comes later. And now it's really like, hey, you should have said it sooner. Well, I didn't say it sooner. I mean, I've been saying it for 4 years. So frankly, the concept that this was never discussed is ridiculous. It wasn't discussed by a committee that was put together, and it was not brought up by the two liaisons that represented the board. That is an accurate statement. So I could live with the fact that I should have told the liaisons on this committee of how important I think it is and why I think it creates a parking problem from day one. From the minute you allow people to build things with inadequate parking for what they're building, you are creating a problem that you then 2, 5, 7 years later have to create a consulting scenario that explains to you how to fix a problem that frankly you created as a board. I could blame boards from 10 years ago, but now it's not boards from 10 years ago. It's happening right now. We are creating that problem. It has been discussed. It has been discussed by everyone in this gallery. It has been discussed with Stuart, who's in this gallery. It is a comment that I've spoken to the village manager and the one before her. And I'm not the only trustee that talks about how in a community like ours, hanging on the side of a cliff, that even if you wanted to walk up in the middle of winter and had good boots on and your children had good boots, you could walk from the bottom of the hill up to the top to go food shopping. Most people would purchase a car. And even studios will have more than one car. So to start with this 1.0 and 1.5 car scenario puts us at a bad place from day one. And now we are doing a brand new plan that continues that. And today and a month ago, we're told, hey, you should have had in front of a public meeting. And my question is, when and how does it get decided? And by what authority do the consultants and the staff sit there and say, you know what, we think this is too big of a change. Therefore, it should have been brought up in front of the public. This is too late. If you note a little anger, it's the same anger I had about a month ago. It's the same anger I had when we weren't recording the conversation. We spoke to you guys. So anger number one is, please do not say again that this was not discussed and this is the first time you're hearing about it, number one. Number two, it angers me because I follow rules. I'm pretty much a rule follower kind of gal. And by following the rules, I really feel I did not do justice to the community that elected me to office. And that I find really upsetting. And I don't know how to undo that. And thirdly, if the board is allowed, is the final sayer of this, not staff and consultants, then what's the problem in changing the number now? Why does it have to be done that way? I guess the argument is that there's a decision that taking it from 1.5 to 2.0 somehow is too large of a change in a code. And now it needs to go, what are you calling it, Manny? A phase 2 approach, which means we'll have to bring it in front of public hearing to change a parking in the middle of consultants doing a public studies based on a comprehensive plan.
Well, no, Mayor,
It's like a real quandary I'm dealing with
yeah,
here.
I sense where you are. I think though that let's take this particular one. There's others like it, as Manny said.
Mm-hmm.
I think now that these have crystallized for you, I think, and again, I will defer to Stuart, but I think the best way to do that and handle it now that these ideas have crystallized is to have us or Jaime, as your planner, put a list in front of you with actual proposals, and then you go to the public separately with those different laws, and you simply have a short EAF. You don't need a consultant. You don't need a huge undertaking for that or the spending of money, but it took a while for those things to crystallize. And an easy, I think, of relatively what other towns have done and villages I've seen is, yeah, they didn't get everything they wanted. They weren't trying to get the search for perfection is the enemy of the good. The search for everything must be perfect before we can adopt the plan. You can go on in circles for that. I think the obvious choice here, the easiest way to do this is to get that list. Jaime develops it with Stuart. You go to a public hearing on a list of items you want to do, and then the public has a say. At least they have a say. Because otherwise, I don't want to, I will defer to Stuart. But other land use attorneys have constantly said to me in this, you risk a lawsuit that throws over the whole plan and requires you to go back to a public hearing on the whole plan. I just think that is, it's unnecessary to risk that.
Yeah, first of all, risk is a business discussion.
Yeah.
So that to me is a moot point, frankly.
May I ask the trustees, what language would they like in?
I'd like the number actually changed. And so for me, I'm really kicking myself for not having expressed this, and kicking myself for not understanding from the beginning the entire process, that I would not, in fact, be able to say that for anything beyond the studio, it should be 2.0 parking spaces per unit and not 1.5.
Mayor, just to point this out, sure, because I did, there were sub meetings on this whole thing, that a lot of the items, as you clearly mentioned earlier today, that they said, look, the steering committee can make suggestions, but the village board has the final say in modifying things as we go. Another clear example is, and Jaime was there, and some of the members of the steering committee were there, where I was very specific and had concerns on some zones on the map that I think they should be changed to something else to reflect actually what that looks like. And the members on the steering committee, some of them, I want to say the ones that we were talking about, that they actually agree, and they drove by those neighborhoods and they say, yes, that absolutely makes sense. But that was not part of the suggestions. But my understanding was that we couldn't make those adjustments. Now we cannot, because it wasn't part of the public discussion. So my disappointment on this is that, Frank, yes, we can definitely do that. But this is the conundrum for me. So we're going to approve this plan that is based on this, and not even within a couple more weeks, we're going to say, well, wait, we're going to change our mind because we didn't do the right thing in here, and now we have to modify this stuff, and we have to go through this whole process.
Manny, if I may, you're not modifying.
Just let me finish, please.
Okay, sorry,
So,
go ahead.
To me, it's like this whole process is not free. We are paying about close to $500,000 for this. So to me, it's like, it seems the process and some of the stuff that we really wanted to be part of this is not being included. Now we have to take staff time to add more stuff to this list. That's the part that bothers me the most. Don't get me wrong. We knew discussions with Stuart. I know in the beginning we said we have to do these other items. We have to clean up some of the language that we have in our zoning. Stuart's, like I said, Stuart has the list, our building inspector has the list, but that was done. I didn't want to add more stuff to our staff to do that. That's why we kind of hire consultants. But now we have to take those items that are not part of this process, because now we could not make it part of the process, sure? And we have to add them to that list. That's the part that disappoints me. That's the part that bothers me.
Okay. So we need to move forward. I think we've, at least two people have stated disappointment, but and actually I think affects many projects that we work on, because we have, as elected officials who work part-time, we have certain expectations of how things get done and being instructed. And Stuart, I think I answered your question with, I would raise from 1.5 to 2. And by the way, I've said that before, minimally. I've also said that I think there should be visitor parking in any units over 10 units, because we have a parking issue based simply on some of that. And we are not a community like White Plains as a city, Peekskill as a city, and other communities that still has lots of space. We are pretty well developed. We can build up, or we can tear down and rebuild, but we don't have a lot of empty space. And people can talk about, all open spaces and all that. We just don't have development. So for the record, there is some disappointment. I don't know how to put that in a comprehensive plan. I don't know if there's a cover sheet that will go with a comprehensive plan. I want to make sure that land use boards who use this not only as a map, but are told by people who instruct them as to what they're supposed to do, the way we get instructed about what we're supposed to do, aren't going to sit there and say, no, that's, this is the right number, no problem. This is the latest comprehensive plan, because the richness of the conversation is never going to be seen by anybody. Certainly nobody's going to look back at these recordings that I'm aware of. So I will think through this, but and maybe get some help on it. But the parking having not really been addressed in this part of it is a disappointment in this plan. Whether it's enough for me not to support this plan is to wrestle with my conscience, whether that one item is enough for me not to support the comprehensive plan with a negative vote. And lastly, the discussion about underutilized properties. I again appreciate words and language and appreciate that those are given planning people language, but that's not really my role. My role is to build two-way bridges between staff, community, the political spectrum, so that human beings who live here, who are not planners, have an understanding of the language that's used. And underutilized, just like as Omar has pointed out about the word grandfathering, which is a common jargon used for people for centuries that today may not be appropriate. Just like many words that we use that are no longer appropriate, and just because they're used by planners and people who are professional staff members who understand it, or engineers, doesn't mean those are the words that we should use. Underutilized to me in common language means that something should be done with it. And we say right in the middle of the plan that preservation is also part of the plan, right? So not doing something is actually an action. And so I differ on this opinion too, that this was left off. I'm not sure who made that decision. Certainly has my name next to it. So I'd like to know why, I don't believe in, well, that's just a common language. Okay, so what? There are lots of words that are common language that we no longer use. Big deal. Because they turn out that they're common and understood, but they have connotations.
Mayor, it may just be me, Mayor. I'm not sure that I followed your comment. Did you want?
Number 4, changes not made. Underutilized properties, the word underutilized judgment, those are my comments. The phrase vacant or is commonly used in planning. I'm not aware, So it was left out, and I had wanted somebody to go through the document and not use the word underutilized properties. That was my request. It was turned down.
Sorry. Okay. All right.
I'm reading the section that says changes not made. That's what I've been doing.
All right. Well, that one, I don't see a problem with making a change like that. What can you, Simon, can you understand a little bit better than I, what the issue is here?
I think the mayor is asking that we replace the word underutilized with something that has less of a judgmental tone to it.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I asked that somebody do a word search through the document, find the words underutilized properties, and find a better word for it.
When we're talking about pieces of land that in our view might have a higher and better use, or some other way of being utilized, that the word underutilized, I think to the mayor has a judgmental tone, and that we find another word that we could use.
Well, certainly we can make that change. That's not a significant change.
It's not a policy change. It's just
not a policy change, and we can make that change. We need to come up with that word, I guess.
Okay. Did you want me to do that, or are you going to do that?
Why don't we check in the morning and let's have a quick conversation about it. We'll come up with something, and when we send out, I'm not sure we couldn't, by the way, just think, can we give this a minute just to, because Jaime made a very good recommendation on the
previous issue on the Arcadian Mall, and maybe we can, the issue here is we don't want to use the word underutilized. We're describing properties that are only partially developed or vacant or not used to their highest and best use. Is that right?
Not from my perspective.
I think that, yeah, so when the mayor was talking about this last time, the big thing is that, and this is something that we've kind of taken to practice in the planning board, that just because you have all this available developable space, it might be better to use some of that space for more green space, more stuff.
Mhm.
So the idea of underutilized space conveys that they should be using all this extra space, which is not really the right tone for the village.
Yes, got
For
it.
this
Right.
document. So what we can talk about is, where appropriate, maybe talking about properties that aren't built to their full zoning ability,
Right.
rather than, saying conferring that that's a desired approach. And underutilized, I think the concern from the mayor, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, is that saying underutilized conveys that we desire it to be more developed, and that is not necessarily the case.
Well, it would be somebody's decision what the right size would be, if any, right? All of those are actions. So last time when I went through this, I said, tell me where we have an overutilized. What is an overutilized piece of property? If you have an underutilized, what's overutilized refer to?
Well, I would think something that perhaps was built above the zoning requirements could be described as overutilized.
No, that's not what you say when you do that. When you do that, you call that either illegal or something else. You don't say that
I
it's
think you're
beyond.
talking about existing non-conforming or.
But that's what you guys say. Like that's the jargon you guys used.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that maybe if this suggestion is okay, we can ask them to go back and say, properties that are not built to the to the FAR allowed under the zoning. It's a really long way of saying.
Yeah, you could say right-sized or rightly utilized or something without the connotation. It's really about sizing, because the minute I think I'm sitting on a board, I've been on it for 3 months, and I see something, and then I go, oh yeah, it's underutilized. It only has 2 floors. It should have 4 floors. It's underutilized. We should utilize it more. No, that's actually not what that's supposed to sound like. So I leave it to you to come up, because I think, Jaime, you do understand what I'm getting at.
I do,
It's the same thing we had about like why do we say illegal housing? It has a connotation. Yes, that is a jargon that planners understand. Sure. But in this day and age, it has a different meaning, a code word or this or that. And that's how I think this looks, because it implies that it should be used more. And I don't think that's really the case. It may or may not be. So I think you get it. I don't think we're going to come up with the word. It may not be so easy. Maybe tomorrow morning with a fresh cup of coffee, you'll come up with brilliance.
But I think we're talking about properties, as Jaime said, not built to their zoning maximum. That's what we're talking about. Properties that are built out under that zoning allowance. We just have to come up with a
something doesn't take 8 words to say 1 word, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's
exactly.
all.
Yeah,
it's hard when you're on the spot trying to do that. Understood.
Yeah. Shall we try that tomorrow and then pass it by all of you and
I feel like I'm the only one that has this issue. I'm not getting a big feeling from my colleagues that this is important to them, to be honest with you. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I'll second that one.
Oh, well, it's okay. I don't need a second. It sort of bothers me the way other words bother other of my colleagues about different issues. Okay.
I would just say the only thing that I would add is considering more asset-based language. So instead of defining it by what it's missing or by its deficit, focusing on its asset. So high potential, high value, whatever, but looking at the positive as opposed to looking at the negative.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Thanks. And I really I understand number 5, the point there, covered in page 127, tiled growth and flexible work arrangements. I almost feel like in the first, when we do when we do the preface to the whole plan, this change in the New York area, but I think across the country that has been caused by that pandemic, I'm not getting a sense from everything I'm reading that it is a minor change. I think this whole flexible work arrangements, this sort of hybrid work relationships are not just a post-pandemic transition. I think it's going to be the way Americans work, especially in major urban environments around New York City, which is where we sit. So very much appreciate that it's included. Thank you for that. Just simply going to reread the plan again and make sure that it's stated even more boldly, because I think it's actually going to change the way communities are built in the next decade. And it happened in the middle of us doing this plan, like smack dab in the middle of it all. None of us really know what it's going to look like. So thanks. Those were my yellow highlights, which you can't see. And that's it for me. I think I was the last one to go, right? Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Even though I did lose my temper, I do appreciate the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of work, to do a comprehensive plan. It's great. It's really hard. I think it took them 4 years last time to do the plan. It took us less time to do a plan that's 3 or 4 times the size. And I think zoning, am I right, was not actually really dominantly included last time, the way it is.
We did the entire zoning code last time, Mayor.
Oh, so it was.
270 did not exist before.
Right. So that's a big deal.
In fact, some of those parking changes that you
they also adopted the LWRP then, and they also adopted affordable housing, and they did everything, all came at the same time.
Yeah, super. It's pretty amazing, actually. So, really big deal. And this is great. So thank you. And it's up, I guess, for next week.
Okay, we'll get you that change. We'll get you that change on the Arcadia, and then we'll try to get a good wording rather than underutilized. We'll try to send those 2 out to you tomorrow or Friday.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you all.
I want to say thank you on behalf of BFJ Planning. Thank you for the ability to work with you, and I'm hoping that on the 16th you'll be in a position to do the findings.
You're hoping that the majority board doesn't vote no on this, right? So.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you've all done. I think the committee. I think everybody worked on it. All the people who were involved. I think you've done really comprehensive and good piece of work, and not perfect. And as we said, you'll be able to make those changes that you want. Once you adopt it, you can keep going. It's not going to be engraved in stone, in other words.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for staying with us.
Yeah.
Have a great night, unless you want to stay for more fun and laughter.
No, we're okay.
Let me get rid of this document. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
So we're up to CDBG, Karen?
We are. So I'm going to turn this over to Corporation Counsel Kahan to talk about our CDBG applications, our Community Development Block Grant applications that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. We're going to discuss the EAC consistency review, the environmental significance, and determination of next steps.
Thank you, Karen. First, let me say I can think of maybe one village department that has not had its fingers in this pie to some extent. With Maddi leading the charge and Jaime, it has been a real team effort to get all this stuff together. And let's just say the county does not make it easy. They had something in their application which said that if we are within the coastal management zone, we need to have a state consistency review. So yesterday if I had hair on the top of my head, it would have all been pulled out because I was trying to find all those forms and found them. And then this morning was told, nah, you don't need that. The county's going to do that. Well, then why would they put it in the application? don't know. But the EAC did meet on this on the 1st. Jaime made presentations to them. We have 4 consistency review recommendations. The EAC was strongly in favor of all 4 projects, very happy about them. So next week on the 16th, there will be multiple resolutions to the board. There actually will be 8 resolutions, but they will all effectively say the following. 1, that the board authorizes the village manager to file the applications with the county. Those applications must be filed electronically by the 25th, and I think by hand the Monday thereafter. So that's, and we need a separate application for separate resolution for each project. Since there are 4 projects, 4 resolutions. Next, there will be 1 resolution each for each of the 4 projects for the board to, for the village board of trustees to find that the projects are consistent with the village's local water revitalization program. As I said, that is the recommendation of the EAC. Those resolutions will also result or ask the board to determine that there is no significant adverse environmental impact from any of these projects, and thus essentially giving them all a negative declaration. We have prepared for all of these projects, or Jaime has prepared, I should say, the short environmental assessment forms. We have the coastal assessment forms, which were also required, which will also be part of this. So next week, those would be the 2 aspects the board will approve with regard to CDBG. One is that the applications can be filed, and second is that there is a determination of consistency and a negative declaration with regard to any negative environmental impacts as a result of the 4 projects. Again, poor Martha's going to have to read them, but they are all essentially identical, the only difference being the nature of the project. That's what will come before it. But we did, as I said, we did have the meeting with the EAC. I do have their recommendations, which are all strongly in favor of the 4 projects. So that's from next week's perspective. That's what will happen. We will be working both the rest of this week and into next week to get as many of the documents together as we can. While the county has said that it does not have to be all in on the 25th, we're certainly going to make damn sure to get as much of it in by the 25th as we can. There may be some things that just physically can't be done, but we will do it. We do have maps to provide them and other documents to provide them. So we're geared up to get all that done for the 4 projects, which, as you folks know, involve new play equipment at Nelson Sitting Park, new play equipment and other work at the park on the trailway between North Malcolm and Ann Street, as well as work with regard to Spring Street. First phase, which is from Broad to Lafayette. Second phase from Lafayette to the entrance to Scarborough Manor. So those are the 4 projects, and we'll have the resolutions for you next week.
Great. Well, I'm
Stuart,
certainly.
I just want to also add, apologies, Mayor. There's also a matching component. These are our matching grants. So the resolution will include the village's commitment to meet the match for the grants as well.
Right. I'm super supportive of this. I see 0 downside to it. Are there folks on this call, although you can discuss it next week too, any of the trustees have issues that they want to bring up now? I'm not seeing.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for everyone that actually has been part of this. But I don't 100% support it.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, it's like I said, it's upside only. And it's terrific if we can. I mean, we're not assured all 4 of them, but can't say we're not trying, right? Or that you guys aren't putting all the effort behind it. We're up to now thank you, Stuart, for presenting this. Thank you, Jaime, for working, as Stuart had mentioned, on this and to continue working on it. extension for preferred developer?
Yes, Mayor. Briefly,
Correct.
I apologize, Karen. The
That's okay.
preferred developer status for Wilder Balter expires on the 24th of June. My recommendation is to present a resolution to the board next week to extend the preferred developer period from June 24th to February 28, 2022. That would hopefully take us past even, with the ladder, so we can get through a lot of this done without having to come back to the board for another period of time. We've informally discussed with Mr. Balter an extension through that period of time. We've also discussed it with Jim Stout, who thought that that extension through the end of February of 2022 made sense. So we would present that resolution to the board next week so that we can get that in place, and there's no gap between the end of one preferred period and the next period.
Equally in support of this again. Does anybody have issues to bring forward, pro or con, about doing this? Not seeing any, so thank you for that. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, village manager, and everybody else that is moving this forward. I think Trustee White expressed something that in the past that about let's move the project forward. Let's be diligent and let's do what we are supposed to be doing, but let's keep moving forward on it. 200 Main Street.
Yes, so as you know, we have been busy. Assistant Village Manager Maddi Zachacz and Paul Fraioli have interviewed remediation consultants for this project. They have selected one from those interviews, and I'm going to turn this over to them right now so they can discuss that recommendation with you.
Paul, would you like me to start? Okay. Good evening, everybody. So just to give a little bit of background, the board is aware of this, but for the public as well, we did receive, based on a 2019 consolidated funding application, somewhere in the neighborhood of $467,000 from New York Main Street program, which is under Homes and Community Renewal, HCR, to rehabilitate the building at 200 Main Street. And that's an interior renovation having to do with a variety of hazardous substances. So part one of the grant was to hire an environmental consultant. Paul and I put together a request for proposal, which the board approved for us to go forward with probably about 2 months back. We did do a site visit a couple weeks ago. We had, I believe it was 7 of the folks who had hoped to potentially apply come to that site visit. Because this is New York State money, there is a pretty large minority and women-owned business component goal assigned to the project. So we made sure to reach out to, I think it was 36 or 40 in total, different businesses that fit those criteria to make sure that we've affirmatively marketed and made sure we've crossed our T's in that respect. And after all of that heavy lifting, we had 5 proposals submitted. 2 of which definitely rose to the top of the heap, one of which we're going to be recommending to you this evening. Just to sort of sum up the kind of work that they're doing. This is doing an auto scan of the interior of the building, so they have an idea of what lies where, doing materials testing to see where potential asbestos containing material and other hazards may lie, and then basically designing the remediation plan and helping us put together bid documents for the company who's eventually going to come in and actually perform that remediation, get everything cleaned out, and basically leave us with a very clean shell so that it's ready to go to market with the potential buyer not having to do any further remediation. Paul, is there anything that you would like to add?
Thank you, Maddi. That was practically A to Z, but I will add maybe a couple things. One was the fact that we do went through a SHPO review, right, as part of the RFP, and all of the work that is going to take place in this remediation project is, I'm going to say 99% is interior. So there won't really be an HPC component here, although they'll be involved and they'll be informed of what we're doing, being that this is in the district, the historic district. The timeline estimated by the consultant that we selected will be about 2 months to prepare the documents, and then 3 to 6 months to do the actual remediation. So it's something that we're really looking forward to knocking out possibly by the end of this year, which is when we have the capital borrow already in place.
The grant covers what? Just the consultation and how something should, how it should be done.
No, it's
It covers the actual remediation.
And the consulting. It's there's a match. The match is probably just shy of probably about $160,000 or $170,000 from the village side, and then that should cover between that and what HCR has offered us. That should cover the whole thing.
Okay, great. If it doesn't, then we have a problem, right? But that's the goal, right? I mean, we've been down this road. Poor Paul. I don't even know how to address it. You've been through your entire career in this village. That building has gone through many, many phases and good intentions. But as I said last time, fingers crossed that this one is it. So I know you're highly experienced in this. So I'm very supportive of doing this. I don't think, again, that why wouldn't we be unless I'm missing something.
Timing is right. I think the timing is right. And,
Right.
You know, building off that email that the manager circulated earlier with regard to the Route 9 corridor study and that being on, hopefully on the heels of the building, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of good things happening in that upper Main Street corridor over the next couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I will say that the goal here is to put this back on a tax roll. So I'm hoping that that actually is something that will happen, because oftentimes building like this, after all this money spent to make it sellable, I've already gotten calls. So I know it's all going to be, why can't we build this or build that and do this? And it's all free. And that's not, in my opinion, the actual goal of this. So I think that's going to be probably the next piece, but I'm glad that this is getting done, and I'm glad and I'm grateful that larger government entities are picking up a lot of the tab for this. That's very helpful to a small village like ours. Is there anybody that wants to either comment or has issues that should be brought to light before we move on?
I do have questions. So Maddi's poll, sorry. You guys mentioned that you guys interview and you have one recommendation on this one. So can you please go a little bit more into details, and how much is this particular consultant going to be costing? I don't want to say the village, but it's going to be, you know, part of the process. Sure. So how much is this going to be, and who is the consultant?
Which part of that would you like me to take, Paul?
One thing, let's add this about the consultant before we answer that. The WBE, MBE component, which was part of the grant, both of the finalists that we interviewed are WBEs. Actually, one was an MBE and one was a WBE, correct? They're both WBEs. I'm sorry, thank you. Both WBEs, so that that was a positive that they both had, and they both submitted the breakdown according to what the RFP called for. One of them we had to kind of amortize it out based on his the estimated schedule. But I think if Maddi, you have your notes in front of you, I'll let you talk about the detailed numbers, but they were pretty close.
I don't actually have my notes in front of me, but I echo Paul. They were pretty close. It's a little difficult because it's not, it can't be exactly apples to apples. So across the four proposals, some of them quoted only an hourly rate and a per sample blended rate, right? So obviously, you know, depending on who the contractor is that's actually doing the remediation, how long it takes them to mobilize, you know, what days they're unavailable and whatnot. The consultant is sort of tied to the contractor's schedule. So it's a little difficult to do apples to apples based on the proposals that we got. However, in the interviews, the conversations that we were sort of able to tease out, both of the folks who were finalists in this process had both done the site visit with us. So they did get a chance to walk around in the building and sort of, speak with Paul and sort of understand a little bit better about what it was that they actually might be getting into. And they were sort of, able to explain to us based on what we've seen and based on our past experience, it might take X amount of time, Y amount of time. So as Paul mentioned, we're sort of able to extrapolate out. And, the proposals, based again on those estimates, were not terribly far apart.
And I think I'm pretty sure it was less than $100,000 for the consultant themselves, right?
I can go back to the sheet. We divided it up into 4 phases. The first phase having to do with the scanning, the second having to do with the testing, the third having to do with getting any variances we require from the Department of Labor, and then the fourth one is kind of where it's a little bit less clear, because that's a project manager on an hourly basis, and again that's based on how many days, air quality testing based on how many days. So when we compared phases 1 through 3 for both, they're very close, and I would say under $50,000 for those first 3 phases, by a little bit. Paul, is that your recollection? I can log into my screen if there are more detailed questions. But
well, to me, it's like, and thank you for that. You don't have to. Eventually, I do want it, because we do have to sign this person, so I would like to have a number, sure, and how much this is going to be. I guess sort of the concern that I have is the grant is for less than $500,000. We do have a matching portion of this, but these consultants right now for the work that they're going to be producing for 2 months to prepare documents to go out for bid, and the length of this for, you said that maybe 6 months of remediation is going to be.
I said 3 to 6.
3 to 6? Okay.
It's more towards 3 if they think they're going to be able to do the whole thing, which is 1 variance with the Department of Labor. Okay. But again, look, being very frank, in a public meeting, there was a lot of learning going on too, with at least on my part. Environmental remediation isn't, I don't think anybody here's forte. So like assistant manager alluded to, we were kind of developing the questions in the interview, really more to benefit us than to ferret them out.
I totally understand that. ACM portion of that, the abatement portion is a totally different animal. You have a lot of air quality control. You have to, do all those things, which I don't doubt that. I guess my concern is because, so out of the money that we are getting, and out of the money that we are matching in a way, sure, it's not going to be that much left for remediation itself.
Can we just go back just a step, because I just want to make sure we have the whole picture. So yeah. I believe that the total amount for the project, as we defined in the application, is I believe $637,000. That's inclusive of the $435,000 that HCR is providing and our match, right? So if the entire service of the consultant over the length of the next 6 months, however long it takes them to do the scanning, do the testing, apply for the variances, put together the bid documents, walk us through that process, it would seem to me, based on the conversations we had with both consultants during the interviews, and Paul, please jump in if I misspeak, that component would be under $100,000, leaving about $550,000 for the physical remediation, and that would be sort of in line with the way that the application was written, the scope of work that we saw at the beginning of the process. Okay. Does that make more sense?
No, and again, so. It always makes sense. So, and I'm going to give you an example. I was literally in a call 5 o'clock today in a job that has a lot of remediation that needs to be done in the city. We have 2 numbers, literally $15,000 apart, but that's not in the budget of our client. So I have to go back to the consultants and try to lower the number down because it's not part of the budget, but that's the work. Is $700,000. That's actually the work that needs to be done. So again, we prepare the drawings. You guys have an engineer. You guys have all this stuff. If the numbers do not come back with $500,000, what do we do next? Because we've been in situations like this prior to that. That's one of the reasons why a connection was never done on a linear park that we have here in the village. So that's what happened. We didn't have that in our budget. So how do we deal with situations like that, if that's the case?
Well, I can tell you, they're not remediation projects because we haven't done one of those. It's a capital project that I can remember. But if something comes back and it's above the estimate, we go back to the board and we ask you to make a decision. Do you want to add the extra money? And we'll present it. If we think it's justified, we either go out to bid again to make sure we solicit more competitive bidding, or we shelf the project, on the other side of the spectrum. The one thing that I'm, have a little more confidence with this than maybe other type capital projects is that this project I don't think is going to be under as much influence as other projects that we're bidding or will be bidding over the next few years on commodity pricing and inflation and material prices. We're seeing that now on a town we're doing on a project we're doing right now in the town. I know we're going to see it in some pending village projects that we're talking about, and that's going to be a big deal, This is not, as far as I can tell, because it's more remediation and existing equipment and manpower and administration and disposal versus anything else.
No, correct. And look, just as a sheet of plywood, it has double the price, sure, and material wise. So I'm not even talking about that at all. I'm just concerned. Look, you guys know how I feel about this project. I do not, anyway, I do, that's my concern. My concern is that if the numbers come back higher, that's all. I would love to know what actually the amount of the contract, of the price of the consultants are, please.
Well, he just
sent me an email.
That just came, I think if I'm not mistaken, that draft just came to us this evening from email, and we have to review that. And we do have to work in his extension of all his estimates into a PO amount, and then you'll know.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions.
I think it's difficult because I think, as Paul mentioned, this isn't something that either he nor I nor anyone else on staff nor any of our, retained consultants are, field experts in. So we're being conservative. We feel like we have a pretty good handle on, what the high side of the pricing might look like for this component. But at the end of the day, we don't have a crystal ball. So, we've done our due diligence. The board will be apprised of each step in the process. So if in fact, like you said, if the bids come back and it's not something that we can absorb, we'll have some decisions to make. But at this point, there's really no way to foresee that.
I think we're surely in a better place than we were when we looked at this in the past, when the village was considering essentially giving the building away if someone would do the environmental cleanup, which was being, numbers were being thrown around in the millions. And because we really didn't know, but I think the time that we took to learn the process and all the vetting we did with the RFP has put the village in a much stronger position, and we are going to realize the fruit of that when we put the building to market.
Yeah, look, it's really a tough scenario. It was given free decades ago. We've had this conversation. This is a lesson in there ain't no free lunches, and villages shouldn't be taking buildings for free because they're never free, and they cause a lot of angst, and it's not an expertise that is had by individuals. Having said that, I'm telling you, I think this is it. I'm feeling really optimistic about this one. This sounds like a good plan. We're getting some help so that our own people aren't paying for this. It's a beautiful building in the center, really at the gateway in our community in some way to our downtown, but in the center of our village on one hand. On the other, it has a lot of negatives, which is why it was given away in the first place. So I say, let's move forward and really, you guys, you know the ups and downs of this at this point. So gain some experience and some scars in the process, right, Paul? So go forward and prosper, you know. Let's hope for the best. So I think we're good. Anybody else?
Well,
Alrighty.
if I may, the sort of second half of this is
Yes,
the resolution
please.
in our special meeting this evening. We do have a resolution on the special meeting to award this section of work to the consultant.
Right. So you want to get this signed off tonight?
In the interest of trying to stay on what is going to be a rather tight timetable, so
Understood.
as to not have to ask for an extension. Yes, please.
Right. Good. Thank you for reminding us. Happy to hear that this was sent widely, et cetera, et cetera. Village manager, I am back to you because that ends the agenda items that I am looking at.
We would then need a motion, Mayor, to adjourn the work session to go into a regular special meeting for purposes of dealing with.
Are we
these-
staying on the same Zoom line, et
Yes,
cetera?
we do.
Yes, we are.
That's what I thought.
Who made the
Yes.
motion?
So moved. I did.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you.
So this concludes this meeting, the work session. We're moving into a special session. I feel like I should say welcome, everybody. I
Okay.
think, is Johnny G still on? Let's see.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
We have one village board resolution for consideration tonight, authorizing the village manager to sign a proposal with Quality Environmental Solutions and Technologies. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Quality Environmental Solutions and Technologies, 1376 Route 9, Wappingers Falls, New York, 12590, for environmental consulting services to the Village of Ossining on the 200 Main Street remediation project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, because I think
Aye.
we've already had the conversation.
Aye.
Thank you, Bob. Second.
Aye.
Oh, we're doing ayes. Aye.
Yeah.
And Omar, I'm assuming an aye on that one.
Yeah.
There's nothing else on the special meeting agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting and to go into a second executive session for a brief one for matters of litigation? Karen and Maddi, you are excused.
So moved.
Second.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Well, we need to vote. Everybody, I
All
think,
those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, all. Thank you very much. 10:48. We're concluding this meeting for tonight. We'll see everybody, I believe, next Wednesday. Thank you, Paul. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Maddi. Thank you, Village
Good night.
Manager.